So today we will talk about the configuration package user interfaces that we are now that are coming up in the release 24 of ADE, which is being released soon. So among other improvements in this new major release, there will be these user interfaces for configuration packages. And our agenda today is to first have a sort of an overview of the configuration packages, what you can do with them. Then I will demonstrate a little bit, and in the end we'll have time for some questions. So let's get into it. So what are configuration packages? Well, most of you, if you have developed with ADE, probably know what they are and what some things that you can do with them. But basically they are a way to configure ADE, and they are committed and deployed in the same way as entity packages, but are a little bit different in how they work otherwise. And I've collected here some examples of things that you can do with the configuration packages. So first of all, this is kind of a common thing when you start with a new ADE project, is that you configure your default settings. So for example, entity types, what kind of entity types you have, what they mean, what kind of naming standards you have for them, what default attributes the entity types should have, their data types, default options, etc. Then you get to the transformations. There are various default transformations configured into ADE, but commonly you make some minor adjustments here and there, or then maybe add your own custom transformations to the list. And for example, that you define a transformation type and then you define what it means in SQL for the different target databases that you might be using. And this is a way of standardizing the things that you commonly do. So you just create a logical type and then use it in your solutions. Then there's the ability to customize data types. So might be that the data type you're looking for is not listed in ADE. It's not one of the default ones, and you want to add that. So that's also possible to do with the configuration packages. Then this is maybe something that everyone has seen, is the configuration of load schedules. So that's also a configuration package. And then there is the definition of environment variables. So I took this here because it's quite a common thing to have customized schedules or cron expressions for different environments. So that you can do with environment variables, and these can of course also be used in the load logic, so SQL steps and so on. Then you can control what you can see in the designer, for example, which database products are shown and in which order. If you want to hide some physical options that are not relevant to your case, you can also do that. Then this is maybe something that not many people are using. You can configure ADE to create links out of Jira or other ticket numbers that you specify, for example, in commit messages. So quite a nice practice to have clear commit messages and then configure ADE to create links out of the ticket numbers. And on top of that, if you want to enforce some kind of policy what comes to the commit messages, you can also configure that so that ADE validates the commit message and then gives an error or a warning if the commit message doesn't follow your regulations. And there's the entity permissions. For each entity, you can, if you want to manage the roles that can, for example, read tables or something like that, you can define the different roles, for example, in a configuration package, and then use them in the entity permissions tab. Then this is the final example of what you can do is the auto completion. So this is also maybe something that not many are using. Maybe you have noticed that it is there, but when you start typing code in the code editor and you press Control plus space, then this menu appears that suggests you like schema names, entity names, attributes, and so on. Also ADE variables come up there. So if something is missing that you commonly need, you can customize the auto completions as well in a configuration package. All right, so those were some of the examples that you can do. And then what about these configuration package user interfaces? So what we are trying to do with these is to make the configuration easier. If you have been using the configuration packages before, you know that it has been quite cumbersome work editing these JSON files, basically. And now we are bringing user interfaces to do the work. So some of the configuration packages have actually been quite complicated with some nested and interlinked structures in the JSON. So it will be much easier in the future to see what actually has been configured, and then also easier to make those changes that you might want to do. And this is a summary of which configuration packages are or have the UI in release 24. So some are still missing them, but those might be added later. And as you might notice, there is, for example, this config load schedules, which already had the user interface before, but now we are adding to a lot of different configuration packages, those as well. Then some notes before heading to the demo part. So the JSON editing will still be available. So if you want to do some partial imports, for example, for some other configuration, it's easier maybe to do in the JSON, so you can still do that. You can also export and import the complete packages, so that doesn't change. Then maybe good to always say that if you are making changes to an existing solution, then it's good to be careful when doing those. For example, if you want to add some new or you want to change some transformations, maybe it's better to create new transformation types and then take them into use in a more controlled manner. Then this is something that is good to remember, that these configuration packages behave similar to entity packages, so that you can commit them, and you should commit them just to get that change history, and then you can go back to an older configuration if something is not what you intended to do. And also some of the configuration packages also need to be deployed to the runtime environment, like the load transformations. Those you need to deploy to the development, test, and production environments if you are using them there. There is documentation available in our public documentation about the config packages. And we have also lately created these new defaults for some of the config packages. So those are available in a public GitHub repository. I might show you that a bit later. So then we're ready to look at them in practice. So just a moment. You should be seeing my ADE screen now. So I'll just show you a couple of examples here. First of all, the environment variables. So how these work is it's like before. You go to the configuration package, then you click configuration, and now there is this user interface being shown if the config package has one. So for example, this environment variables package, quite straightforward, simple things. You configure your environments, which match to the environment names that you have, well, your runtimes basically. So this is something that you do once and then you have them there, and then you can create new environment variables here and set the names and values for those. So, and then also it's quite easy to see what you already have there. And this, if you look here to the editor, you can see that it is also still here. So everything you do in the UI will be reflected in this JSON format as well. So you can also edit this from here. Then maybe the most complicated config package that we have had is the entity defaults. This has been actually quite painful even to edit. So now it has this user interface, so it makes it much easier to make changes here. You have your entity types defined, then default attributes, attribute types, etc. And then when you want to, for example, configure what kind of attributes you want to have in a hub table, you just open the hub table and then you get your attributes, default attributes here. You can choose the transformations and so on. You can also set physical options here as default, and yeah, other things as well for the load types and default keys and so on. So quite a bit easier than before. Then as a practical example, I wanted to show how you can configure those transformations. So I have an example entity here with hash key attribute. And if we check the entity mapping, you can see that I'm using this something called reference hash key as the transformation. And now I actually want to, let's duplicate this tab so I can open the config package in the other tab. So we have the config load transformations package. And if we look at the configuration, we can find the reference hash key here. And then there are the definitions for what the transformation does in this free marker syntax. So if I open one of them, you can see it here. So this one actually used to be quite painful to configure because you had this free marker syntax in one row in that JSON document. So now you can actually use proper lines here and everything, so it looks like something more understandable. So if I, for example, now wanted to create a case-sensitive hash key, I could just take this free marker syntax here, copy it, then go back to the main page, create new transformation. Let's call it hash key case sensitive. Give some give some descriptions, show in designer, then you can choose where you want to position it in the menu. So you can just put it last, so 30th. Then create that, open transformation we just created, and then I can insert the formula here. I just pick which database product and then add the formula. And now we wanted to make this case sensitive, so I just remove the upper from here. And about this syntax, this basically what we have created in those default configurations is just handling for different data types, how those are converted into string before they are hashed. So this is something important if you are, for example, using timestamps in your hash keys, then it's good practice to always convert them in the same way to string before hashing. Otherwise, you might have problems if the defaults change or something like that. Also, if you're migrating from one database to another, it's a good practice to try to make these as similar as possible to between the different databases, and that kind of work we have been doing in the new defaults that we have created in that GitHub repository. But anyway, we can save this now. And then if we go back to this one, I actually probably need to refresh the browser to get that new transformation type here. And then we can see that now it has, the upper has disappeared from that. Then we could just configure the same thing for other database products as well. And for you to get started with the transformation formulas, you can look at our examples in that repository I mentioned. So, of course, since you are already working on like projects and you have defined your own ways of doing these transformations and your own defaults, it does not make sense to just import everything from the library on top of what you currently have. But if you know that you want to make some changes somewhere, you can just look at this repository and maybe find some hints, or maybe copy a part of the solution to your solution. So we have the README here stating what kind of entity types and transformation types we have. But then under the transformation formulas, you can find examples for different target databases for those pre-marker syntaxes. So it's quite easy then to get started with this. And this is a standard, so you can also Google free marker, so you can find guides on how to do this. But basically, this is a good place to get started. I think that's pretty much all I had. So do we have any questions or comments or anything? There's something in the chat. Yeah, thanks, Markus.
Hi, it's Ville here. One
Hello.
thing about the variables. So I've seen that many people are using variables for cron scheduling, which is then quite natural that the variable value is different to in every environment. But I also seen cases where you want to be them to be the same, and then it feels quite redundant work just to enter the same thing in 3 times. So just maybe it could be a product enhancement just to be able to select that this is in effect in every environment with this value.
Yeah, perhaps. So you mean that, for example, here where, well, that's a good example. We have the same value in actually for many of these variables, same value in each environment, so that you could somehow configure it that it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, although in the end it's quite a limited number of environments that you usually have, but might make sense in some cases.
Well, we used to have we have three environments, and last time I was using variables was to enter query tags in the variables, and then you might end up having dozens of query tags, and multiplied by 3, it makes this nice GUI even to look like swamp easily. So then we gave up using variables.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that environments that have a lot of variables could use, for example, if you could, well, you can actually filter this, but maybe tags would be useful here as well. But let's see.
But I wish I had the user interface you are showing now when we were putting our project a couple of years ago together, because latest commits for some packages are quite old because nobody dares to touch them anymore. So how about existing installations? This I guess all the information is then available in user interface.
Yeah, it will show you what has been configured. So
Great.
I did notice that, for example, for the transformations, if you haven't edited the free marker nicely, it will show as one line, but then you can just copy it to, I guess at least VS Code has some way to like make it nicer, so then you can just copy it back here. But yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
thank you, Ville, for asking. Yeah, are there any other questions?
I can see in the chat there is from Arttu. Yeah, so editing transformations that are already being used. So does AD warn about this, or might something just eventually break? I don't think there is any warning about that. The thing is that if you go and change something that is already in use, you can do that. But then you have to go and also deploy the entity package where you want those changes to happen. So it could be that if some, let's say, hash key transformation is probably used all over the place in the solution. So then you would have to go and deploy all the packages, or if you don't, then it might come as a surprise for someone that it might change later on. And generally changing like those hash key transformations or something profound like that is not a good idea unless you really know what you're doing, because then you might, the logic with which the keys are calculated might change, and suddenly your data warehouse has like really weird things happening everywhere. So that's why I said that it's good to define new transformations and then take them into use in a more controlled way. Any more questions, or do we head towards the weekend? All right, thanks everyone. Actually, Ville, did you have something more to say?
Yeah, and Johanna, you raised a hand. Johanna, do you have?
It was an accident, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Taha, for sharing this to us. I want to show you something what's going on next. So I hope you see my screen now. So just shortly, what's going on in this coming months with ADE? First of all, we have a ADE advanced training that's still open for you. I will send these slides to you and also recording of this, and I will add the link to the advanced training there if you are interested in joining us. Then in June we have a next info session about our new load options held by Greg Colley. Then something to come and wait for, community events, and also ADE Summit is coming again. I think it would be next October or November. But yeah, these are important things to have in mind when checking your calendar. But yeah, I think we are ready. Thanks for all participating here, and biggest thanks to Taha for showing the new configuration package UIs to us.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And bye-bye.